Cheers and welcome to Irondale Brewing. If you're wondering what in the actual Jules Verne all this stuff is, it is not for my local steampunk convention, which is actually a thing where I live. Not into it myself, but okay. Anyway, this is a steam condenser lid and contraption setup. I don't even know what you call this stuff. So I got this a few months ago and I have not had a chance to hook it up and test the boil off rate. So that's what I'm going to do today. And as per usual, when I get a new piece of equipment, I'm going to do my learn along with me sort of style video where I put this thing together and kind of walk through how I'm going to set it up. I have it in my head, but I haven't really done it in real life yet. But basically, there's a lid, there's a bunch of pipes and hoses and clamps and stuff, and an adapter to get from one size to another for the main part of it. And we'll go through all of that in great detail here in a minute. And I'm actually going to do a boil-off test as well, since that's kind of the crucial difference when you move to a setup like this versus boiling open, is that your boil-off rate may be different. We'll see for me. I've heard everything from it's vastly different to it's not very different, but it's a good thing to know. Now, as far as why I went to a setup like this, so I don't know how high I have the camera. Behind me, there is a range hood that I have modified. I have a pretty extensive video about how I gutted it and redid some stuff to make and put a new fan in to make it work better. But at that point, I was doing small batch brewing either in an anvil kettle or in my gigawort. I have since moved to a 65-liter BrewZilla. The area behind me is a traditional kitchen countertop. Of course, there's no way a BrewZilla is going to sit up on that thing, and I thought briefly about cutting the center of the cabinets out and giving it a spot to slot in there and having a kind of adjustable height table in there and all this stuff. I still may do something like that. I didn't do that yet. And so if you've watched some of my other videos, the BrewZilla is over by a window, and basically I just have a fan that I point in the direction of the BrewZilla to send the steam mostly out the window. It is a far less than ideal solution. Steam still gets in here. It's not as bad as it would be if I didn't have that fan going. But depending on what's going on with weather, humidity, all this stuff, it's less than ideal. So electric brewing is great. You can brew indoors, of course. That's fantastic. But the steam is an issue that you have to contend with. And even if you get something like a condensate hood, which are pretty expensive compared to a kind of relatively run-of-the-mill kitchen range hood, it still doesn't solve the problem completely. So even when I do small batches, and I still do those occasionally with my range hood, there's still, even with all the modifications I did to make it better, there's still a little bit of condensation that goes on the range hood. So anyway, the idea with this is you take all the steam coming out of the kettle and you capture it and you route it through a bucket, and we'll talk about how that works. But basically, it's just a matter of channeling it up through the top, and then you have a mist of cold, I'll say, but ground temperature water going down into the steam that then condenses it into just water that goes out into a bucket, or in my case, probably just route it to my floor drain. So we'll talk about, that's kind of the why you might want to look into one of these things. And we'll talk about how you do it right now. All right, let's go through all the components that are involved with this steam condenser lid setup. The first, obviously, is the lid. Now, if you have a BrewZilla that comes with the normal glass lid, you can't use it for the steam condenser hookup. You got to get one of these lids. There are two different versions of it. This is for the 65-liter. They also make a 35-liter. Obviously, you get the one that is correct for your size of BrewZilla. This one is called the Pro Distillation Lid. I think you can use it for distillation also. I know nothing about distilling, so I'm not even going to get into that. But this is the kind of lid that I chose for basically one reason. It has this little sight, quote, glass. I don't remember the name of this type of plastic that's highly chemically resistant and heat resistant. But the nice thing there is basically with that, you can more easily take that off to drop hops in during the boil, add additions, whatever you need to do. It does have a clamp that goes around it. From what I understand, once you get boiling, it's not super important to have the clamp on there. I'm probably going to do it with the clamp just to be safe, and because, for the most part, I'm just opening it a couple times during the boil to drop stuff in, or will be. Haven't used it yet. But basically, that's the difference between the Pro lid and the normal lid. Now, the Pro lid costs more because you get this thing. It also costs, you have to invest a little bit more because you have to, for the rest of the steam condenser stuff to attach, you have to get this, I think it's a 4-inch to 2-inch adapter. I'm gonna walk around here and make sure that's coming up okay on the camera. Not great. I want to adjust that a little bit, but anyway, you'll see it in action and attached to the BrewZilla too. But basically, this is just a piece of metal that goes from this large opening on the lid, has a seal. Everything you'll see in action today has these ridged gaskets. Keeps everything nice and tight. And then the top of this thing, once it's down to that smaller size, is the right size to attach to the actual piping you need for the steam condensation action to happen. If you don't get the Pro lid, then I believe you don't need this piece, because the the normal lid, the non-Pro lid, however you want to say it, is just that size already. So that would save you a little bit of money if you're looking to get this sort of setup. Now I will say also, even with the non-Pro lid, what goes on the top here is basically just this little cap, whatever. So you can, if you don't have this sight glass thing down there, you can just pop this off to drop down. It's just, I guess, a little bit less convenient. And also then, you can't see what's going on in the boil, which kind of appealed to me too, which is why I went with the Pro setup. So that's kind of the lid part of it. And this little adapter, chimney pipe, whatever you want to call it, to change the size from 4 inches to 2 inches. So that's the lid. So again, you'll need a new lid. My understanding is some of the other systems like Anvil and whatnot, you might not need a new lid, but the BrewZilla, you definitely will need a new lid. Now, how this all fits together, and I'll kind of just do it in pieces, parts here, and then we'll see kind of the assembly of it in a minute here, is basically off of this part I was talking about. You attach this piece of piping. This part says BrewZilla on it, and that's an easy way to remember. This is the part that goes on the top. I mean, it's clear enough, but and then obviously once this is on top of the lid, the steam as you boil will come up through here. You got the lid, the cap on the top, and then this pipe leads over to another pipe like this. Hopefully you can see that. And then basically the mister goes in the top of this to shoot cold water down in there, and then comes out the bottom into bucket, drain, whatever you want to do. And let's see what else. Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. So let me get this part out of the way. Again, if you're not quite understanding how it's all going to go together, ultimately, do not worry. We will see it in action. So this is the top part that has this mist water attachment on the bottom. So this goes in the top of the longer pipe. Again, I'm hoping these angles aren't too terrible, but we'll see it in action. And then you have a water source coming in here that shoots out the bottom, and then that kind of does a fine mist on the steam as it's coming out the pipe, and it goes out the bottom. And then speaking of the bottom, on the bottom you have this attachment that is a 3/8 inch barb, and you can just attach, you'll want high temperature capable silicone hose that goes on the bottom of that longer pipe, and then you can run that hose into a bucket or kind of down a drain or whatever you want to do. Just make sure if you are running it into a bucket where you're collecting the water, make sure the hose never goes into the water as you collect it, because that will cause potentially backflow into the BrewZilla. But as long as it's got a clear path out, then you're okay. And then I think that's about all I'll show from this angle, because this is a little bit awkward. But basically, again, you got the lid, you got the adapter in my case, a couple of pipes, and some other bits and bobs. And that will be the setup that we'll see in action on the BrewZilla here in a minute. And like I said, when you get this set up, there's tri-clamps of all sizes. That's for most of the fittings. This is for the big part on the lid. And then this one is a little bit different design, and it's for the sight glass, which is nice, so then it makes it easy to see, kind of which is for which. It's pretty obvious, but we'll go over it. But they made it pretty nice as far as just the parts go to make it pretty easy to figure out how this fits together. All right, I'm going to switch angles here, and we'll shoot the BrewZilla as I assemble all this stuff. Hopefully this won't get too awkward, but what I'm gonna do now is show you how this sets up on the BrewZilla itself. A little bit difficult to get good angles and whatnot, but hopefully this will make it clear. I want to get back far enough that you can see the whole contraption when it's on top of the BrewZilla, and then I'll do some kind of more stuff on my phone that's a little bit closer up with the actual functionality of it. But the first thing is make sure that you have all your clamps attached to your BrewZilla. I didn't, since I didn't use the lid for a boil, I only had the one clamp attached to put the Bluetooth thermometer on. But so just make sure and install the rest of those, because you are definitely going to want to clamp the lid down as you start to use the steam condenser. So I'll just snap all those down. Did not lock my wheels on this cart, so you'll see it move around a little bit, but not a big deal. Okay. All right, so lid attached. I left a gasket on there, and then the next thing I would probably do is, I think anyway, is put the gasket on there. This one's even a different color, but that's your 4-inch gasket that goes on the main port. Then I will grab that size converter thing we talked about that you need with the Pro lid. Put that on there. Get the appropriate sized tri-clamp. And while you're putting this together, kind of be mindful of not getting too many of your tri-clamp screws all, in the same spot, so you're not fighting too much with each other. But anyway, sorry, I should have shown this. The big tri-clamp. Again, the sizes are pretty obvious what goes with what. But that's the biggest one that comes with a setup. So I'll just put that back here because nothing else will go in the back like that. In fact, you know what? Because of the sight glass there, which also has a clamp on it, I'm going to turn this a little bit to the side to keep the kind of, we'd call it hinge, out of the way. And again, I'm making this up as I go because I've never actually put this thing together before. I'm just going to keep everything loose for right now, so I don't spend a whole lot of time really cranking stuff down. And then when I'm actually going to do the boil test in a minute here, we will do it for real. Okay, and I guess the next thing I'll probably do is this sight glass, which again is that is it HDPE, something like that, plastic. It's the same material that is on the BrewZilla for the sight glass, on the newer BrewZillas for the sight glass on the side where your pump goes through. And then this is a 3-hinged. It's the only one in this kit. Clamp. So I'm going to put that on there. Get that tightened up. And again, I'm just kind of trying to leave stuff from, leave all these clamps from stepping on each other. Okay, and again, you'll tighten it down more for the real deal. In fact, I probably will tighten this one down a little bit because this is what's going to hold all the weight of the thing hanging off the side. So make sure that's nice and tight. All right, and then the next thing would be the short piece, and this is the part that says BrewZilla Steam Condenser on it. In my case, I'm going to do it this other direction because my floor drain is off to that way, or if I run it, I think I'm going to do it in a bucket, have the output go into a bucket so I can kind of get a sense of how much water these things use, because that is a concern, or it may be a concern for you. These are not very water friendly. That said, the hot water that comes out of there you can use for cleaning or dump it in your garden or whatever. You don't want to use it for anything related to stuff that would wind up in your beer, because of course the water that comes out of there is going to have DMS. But it is useful for other things, possibly. I may just let it run down a drain. But if you are in an area where water is super expensive, or where you're just trying to conserve, you might choose to do something different with it. Oh, anyway, sorry, as I'm talking about all that nonsense, 2-inch gasket. At every join point, you're going to have a gasket and a clamp. Probably obvious, but get that on there. And then clamp this in there. And I've seen people kind of put it together off to the side and then just clamp the main part on the lid. That seems like a little bit... I don't even think I'd do that when I was brewing, because probably after you're done mashing, you bring it up to a boil, at least I would, with the lid off and with the grains probably still draining. And then it's, not that big a deal to slap this stuff on here while it comes up to a boil. I don't think you need to wait for it to be at a boil to put the thing on there. Okay, and then that's the short piece. And then the long piece, you probably already know what's going to happen. There's a gasket, there's a clamp, and there's this longer piece. Now, to me, this seems a little bit weird. You do want, because you could do it this way. That is not the correct way. You want these two to be even from everything I've seen, and you'll see why I am a little bit, or why that was a question in my head when I was first looking at all the parts in a second here. And then just get that gasket on there, get the clamp on there. A little bit awkward to hold all this stuff at once, but it works, I think. Well, we'll see. This is the most challenging part of it so far. Okay, there we go. Just have to fiddle with it a little bit. This clamp was not loose enough to get in there yet. All right, there we go. Get a good hold on it. And kind of make sure everything's squared up here as you're putting together. Again, I'm not gonna worry about that too much right now because I am gonna take it apart and put it back together. Okay, so now we kind of have the main part of it set up. We got our sight glass. Steam comes up through here, goes across there. I'll put the cap on there. Probably should have done that first. And then the cold water goes in here, shoots it out the bottom, or condenses the steam because of the temperature difference, and then shoots it out the bottom. So the cap, same thing there. This is just a metal plate. It's obvious which way it goes. Gasket, cap, tri-clamp. I don't know, do you call it a tri-clamp if there's not two hinges? I don't know. Anyway, one of these clamps. I think people that have fancier stainless steel fermenters probably are way more familiar with the terminology. But anyway, it's a clamp. Okay, so we got the lid on there. Then the next thing would be the misting part. And the way this works, I think they gave me one extra clamp, it looks like. So the way this works is, I'll show a little bit closer up compared to what we were able to see in the previous shot. There's a water input here. This, you can see that little pinhole down there shoots this kind of fine mist of water out the bottom. The reason I thought that this seemed a little strange is because when this thing is in there, as you can see, it's going to be a little bit below this level. Some of the other brands of condenser hoods, this is much, that I've seen anyway, this is much shorter. So I'm going to look for 1 second to make sure that you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's probably not super close up, but the misting part is much shorter, so it's above where the steam is coming out. It must not matter. I looked at a bunch of videos, and Kingland doesn't have great documentation on this, but from what I've seen, this is the right way to do it. And I've seen it in action, and it works, so it just seems strange to me. But anyway, just sharing in case anybody else has that same thought as you're working on it. So again, same deal. Clamp goes on. And I'm gonna turn this a little bit, make it a little bit more squared up with where I'm gonna have my water. Okay, again, not gonna crank it down super hard at the moment. And then the last part is the barb that comes out the bottom where you can attach a 3/8 inch inner diameter hose. I think this is, at least that's what it said in the documentation. I use 3/8 inch high temperature silicone, and it is really tight on there, which I suppose is good, to the point where it actually gouged the plastic a little bit, but doesn't matter for this purpose. It's just outlet for the water. Okay, and then here again, gasket, clamp. Probably should have done this different direction for my handedness, but we'll make it work. Okay, yeah, I ended up trying to stay out of the way of the camera and ended up tightening a lot of these left-handed, which I'm not left-handed, but that's okay. Shows you how easy it is. Okay, so that is the whole contraption. Now, obviously, there's no hoses coming out yet, but so let's go ahead and kind of stub out what that's going to look like as well. So the kit I got from Williams Brewing came with, or you can optionally opt in to pay more. It's not free, but basically you can add on the input hose contraption. So this comes with this duo-tight fitting. I don't know what size. I think this is 6.5 millimeter. It's not 8 millimeter. I don't know what size this other part is, but basically it's just a, it's just a normal duo-tight reducer. And then on the other end, The part that came with it is just this plastic part, and then I put a quick disconnect in there because I do not do any hose stuff without quick disconnect because it drives me absolutely crazy. So I would highly suggest doing quick disconnects for literally everything. I think I'm going to redo this setup and get a Duo-Tight 6.5 millimeter to 1/2 inch, I think is as big as they make, threaded, you know, garden hose connection. My hoses are 3/4, and then you have to get an adapter to go from 1/2 inch to 3/4. But that way, coming out of the top here will just be a quick disconnect for the hose. I'm a little bit concerned about the weight, especially since I use stainless steel hoses for all the stuff in the brewery. So the advantage with this thing is it's very lightweight. But anyway, this fitting here is Duo-Tight, so you just stick that in there. Like you do all Duo-Tight stuff, I always just jam it in there and pull back to make sure it attached. And then this would go onto my quick disconnect water source that I have coming out the bottom of my sink that's off to the left here. I just have a hose bib under my sink that I use for my work chiller as well. And that would feed the water in. And then let me just set that down for a second. Well, that didn't work like I thought. That's okay. And then just to complete the picture here, this is 3/8 inch inner diameter silicone hosing. I have a pretty long length here. I think it's about 5 feet. And that way I can run it off the bottom, and my floor drain is right off camera to the left of the frame there. But like I said, you can just have a shorter length that goes into a bucket. You just have to make sure of 2 things. One, that you pay attention to the bucket so it doesn't fill. My understanding is you can use as much as, or can output as much as 10 or so gallons an hour. And so that's one of the things I want to test as well. And to make sure that the hose stays above the level of the water and absolutely cannot be submerged in the water while you're using this thing. Okay, I think that is the assembly I want to do for now. So I think the next step is I'm going to fill the BrewZilla up with about 8 gallons of water, since that's usually what I wind up with for my brewing. Most batches I'm about 8 gallons or so. And then we're going to run a boil on this thing, really clamp it down, run a boil on this thing, and see how it behaves. I did want to get a quick shot of the lid after I took it off. I kind of cranked down all the tri-clamps and left everything put together and just took the lid off. And I just wanted to show that because this does, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, you could be assembling this kind of at any point during your brewing process, because it does stay nice and stable, and it's very well balanced. Sorry if I'm getting in the way of the camera. My concern was that it would, kind of be tipping this way, because of the weight. It might be worse if you have the non-pro lid and you don't have this part that raises everything up higher. But that seems very stable, very well balanced, and that's good to know, because then you can kind of assemble it all off to the side as you're kind of getting up to your boil, and just slap it on there and put the clamps on, instead of assembling it on the BrewZilla like I did as we were going, which actually might have been better for video, but at least you got to see it on the BrewZilla as well. But that's good to know that you can kind of assemble it off to the side. While the water is coming up to a boil, I thought I'd go ahead and just run water through. Hopefully you can see this, the misting part of the steam condenser setup, just so we can see how that behaves. And this is coming from a water source, just a normal hose bib underneath my sink here in the brewery. I have crazy high water pressure at my house, and I'm just going to kind of play around with it a little bit. My understanding is that the water pressure doesn't matter quite so much, since this thing will kind of control what the mist is doing, and that you kind of adjust accordingly, as long as you're seeing kind of a steady output of stuff into your collection bucket or going down your drain, then you'll know it's working. But I'm going to set that down. Well, actually, yeah, set that down for a second. Hopefully this won't make a mess. I got to grab the shutoff valve here on the other end of the hose to be able to show this. Okay, now I can get hold of it with both hands, I believe. All right, so I'm going to start some water coming through. This is also a good way to test for leaks. I know my hose itself and the quick disconnects on the hose don't leak, but I have not tried the part that came with the steam condenser. So I'll turn on the water here and we'll see what happens. Okay, I think you can probably see that. That's a pretty good, it's a pretty good mist. I'm just going to see how much the water pressure makes quite a bit of difference. I actually have the water off at the moment. This is just the hose clearing out. It does not take much because I barely turned, I'll see if I can show this or not, but basically on the hose coming out of my hose bib under my brewery sink, I have one of these valves. That way I can shut it off at the source and also kind of more easily turn it on and off as I'm using it. Okay, so we have gotten all the water drained out of there. I'm just gonna barely turn this on. Okay, as I barely turn it on, you see we have that going. I don't think you probably need more than that. That's a nice steady, hopefully you can see a nice steady mist that would probably span, from the looks of it, the width of that pipe. And that is just barely any water pressure at all. So that's good though. That means it doesn't take much water, kind of on a gallons per minute basis to let this thing rip. I do not have a flow meter. It would have been interesting to see how much water I use on the input side. I don't know what the total output, what volume of steam versus the water going into it will be. That'll give us some indication of how much water it uses, but it does not take much water pressure at all to get what looks to be a pretty good mist going. So just wanted to show that before we put it back together and test it actually on the BrewZilla. Just a couple comments while the water's coming up to a boil here. Basically, the lid I'm just showing on there with no clamps to show that, again, it's very well balanced, this setup. Can't speak for the other type of lid. And the weight is such that I bet that thing would just stay on there. Obviously, you'll clamp it on there. I'm just saying that's nice and stable if you just to move it around and to settle it ahead of time and set it on there. That seems like a better way to go than what I did originally. And then for the purposes of this test, I'm just gonna have a shorter length of hose coming off of the output side, and I'm gonna clamp it to the side of that bucket. Again, you want to keep it above the water level, so I have it such that the bucket can hold 5 gallons before I probably need to empty or swap out for a different bucket. You can't really leave it dripping. I mean, I could in my situation. And then ultimately what I'll do is I'll have a longer length of hose, I think, unless I decide I want to save the water for something. And it's going to run just over to this floor drain over there. Forgive me, I did not sweep and mop before I did this video. But anyway, I'll probably just run it over to that floor drain there. That'll just be more convenient. And I kind of don't think I'll use the water. I probably should figure out a way to use that. But anyway, that's kind of what I'm going for, and I'll have more to say when we hit a boil here. Okay, so we have hit 212. Sounds like it's a good rolling boil. I'm going to look in there and try and get a shot of so that's a decent rolling boil. So probably what I would do when using the steam condenser lid is wait for, a bit of a hot break. I'd probably throw my boil hops in and then put the lid on. So we're going to assume that that's what's happened here. Again, we're at 212. I set it to a target at 214. Just because that tends to hold the boil better. If I set it at 212, and you have a little bit of a risk of it dropping down too low. But I think that was looking pretty good. Amount of liquid that has boiled off in the course of the steam coming up to a boil is negligible to the point where it still looks like it's at 8 gallons, just for reference. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on now. Okay, so we'll go ahead and grab this lid. We'll assume again, like I probably would have thrown just my boil hops in there, because why not? Maybe even let it do a hot break after you throw the boil hops in there. Clamps for safety. The other thing I have not mentioned that I hope, good thing I didn't find out the hard way while filming this, is you need gloves, because all this stuff is going to get hot, and I'm going to take some temperature readings kind of as it's boiling for an hour here. That was a little tight. Okay, so the lid is clamped on. I'm gonna grab my clamp and put my hose down here on the side of the bucket, which I don't think you can see that in this shot. I'll take some shots with my phone as well. And then I will hook up my intake hose. Up top here. I love that this is duo-type, makes it easy. Get on there. I'll hook up the water supply. So I disconnected that to mess around with some stuff. Get that hooked back up, and I will turn it on. And if not, a lot of pressure, and we will see what starts happening here. Okay, it is nice that that hose is clear, so you can kind of see what's going on. Okay. So I will get some footage on my phone here too. That'll be helpful. This is going to fill up pretty quickly. I kind of expected to be a little bit more of a trickle, and I don't know what's appropriate here, but throwing in some footage from my phone here. Okay, so there's the hood, or the lid in all its glory. I don't see any steam coming out anywhere on there. The intake hose. And then you can see going into the bucket, that is the rate at which it's coming out currently, and I have it just a trickle as far as the actual water pressure. So that's a little bit more than I would have guessed. I have heard people, sorry, you're probably going to pick up that audio. Well, I maybe I'll switch the audio. There's a plane flying over. We have I live near a small airport with some cool little planes flying around, but sometimes it's a little bit noisy. So anyway, the water coming in there into that bucket that's faster than I would have guessed. And I have heard some people say that you can use as much as 20 gallons in the course of an hour boil. I can see that easily at the rate we're going, but we'll see how this goes. And then of course too, if I wanted to put hops in, say I had hop additions during the boil, just unclamp that thing and pop that little sight glass off. It's interesting that the sight glass kind of steamed up. I don't know if that will clear up because it's not much of a sight glass if you can't see what's happening. Okay, so audibly it changed tone a little bit. I don't hear as much bubbling. The other thing I'm going to do is reduce the power on the BrewZilla and see what will keep the boil here. I'm going to get in front of my other camera. Hopefully this doesn't get too weird, but let's change. Oops. Oh, that's the... Sorry, I'm trying to look at this through my phone. Okay, so we're going to reduce this to... I'll do 57. We'll see how that does to keep it boiling. Again, with the lid on there, I should be able to run less power, but keep the boil going. Let's check on our water for fun. Yeah, it's filling. That bucket's filling up pretty quickly. This is gonna use a lot of water, which is the huge con of this setup. It may be worth it, especially if you my wife has a pretty extensive garden. Maybe I'll see if she can use it to water stuff, but she has a drip system set up, so she may not need it. If you can reuse the water or reuse it for cleaning, maybe I'll do that. Then it's not quite so bad, but that is using quite a lot of water so far. Anyway, I'm gonna let this boil for a while. We'll get some temperature readings in a minute and see what's happening. Thought I'd get a shot of this. I kind of want to see what the boil is doing because the temperature is showing like 211.6 at 57% power. I can still hear it bubbling. But anyway, I took the clamp off of the sight glass, which again, not much of a sight glass if it's going to stay fogged up like that. I don't know if that's a thing I need to, there's a solution for or not. But anyway, I'll pop that off. Again, use gloves. I got to go get my gum thermometer. I can't find it. It is definitely still boiling. I won't be able to show you down in there, but you can see there's steam coming out, but it is definitely still a rolling boil at, the thing I didn't know is if the temperature if it just meant you could keep it at a boil at lower, yeah, and that actually is going to blow off of there if you can keep it at a boil at lower temperature, or if you actually kept the temperature at 212 and it just took less power to do so. But it doesn't seem to even want to go above 211-ish, but it's definitely still rolling in there. So just for reference, and I will get that clamp back down. Again, wear gloves. All this stuff is hot. So this is maybe 20 or so minutes into the boil, and we are up to 3 gallons of water already. The other thing I'll say is the water pressure doesn't seem to matter. I turned it, when I took that shot of the mister kind of just hooked up to the hose and shooting out into the sink, you could definitely see a difference in the context of the water flow coming out of the system when you turn that pressure up. Doesn't seem to matter. I turned it all the way up and turned it down to barely on at all, and the output was still about the same. So that must, in place in that tube, that must just be the behavior. The other thing, update on the humidity. It is down to, sorry, didn't dust the top of my fridge, 72. It was up to 90 whatever a couple minutes ago, so you can see that it makes a massive difference in terms of, you know, the amount of humidity, obviously, when you're trapping it that way. I think on a normal brew day, if I, you know, had stuff closed up and kind of right at the beginning of the boil before I had the fan going and stuff, it'd be in the 80s. So this definitely makes a huge amount of difference. I think, you know, just normal in this room when I have my dehumidifier running, I'm not, you know, boiling something. It's in the kind of mid 60s or so. So that's absolutely pretty darn good for having something boiling. Now that the boil has been going for a while, let's check some temperatures. Just gonna get this thing working. Okay, so I have an Uni. I have another one of these somewhere. I can't find it, but an Uni gun thermometer that hopefully will work. So let's kind of check the temperatures of some of this stuff for reference. So that, you know, kind of main pipe there is 103-ish. A little bit hotter up there. That crossbar, 100 degrees. See what happens when you get over here. Yeah, 90 or 82 by the time you're coming down below where the water would be hitting it. And then the water in the bucket coming out about 93. So for reference. Anyway, and then the lid itself, I guess I didn't do that, is, yeah, that's going to be your hottest. Well, depending on where you hit it, this thing's pretty sensitive at 100, somewhere around 100, 110, something like that. Anyway, just for reference, wear gloves. Stuff does get hot. So all these connections seem nice and tight. The one place that I'm getting a drip, oddly enough, is right from that duo-type thing. So I don't know if I just need to get a new one of those. But that is the one place that's dripping for whatever reason. So revisit that as well. Everything else is nice and tight. No steam coming out anywhere. So yeah, something's got to go wrong, I suppose. Had to get one more shot of this little drip that I have. Interestingly, I don't know if I can do this one-handed or not, but if I push it in and hold it tight, it stops leaking. And then if I let it go, you'll see it starts to come out where the duo-tight, maybe it won't do it this time, do it eventually. So anyway, it's almost like the water pressure is pushing it out away from where it needs to seal. So I may just get a new one of those and see if that solves the problem, or do that other setup I was talking about. But anyway, that seems to be what's going on there. And that's the only leak anywhere in the system, so can't complain too much, I guess. All right, we're coming to the end of an hour-long boil, so I'm gonna go ahead and start shutting things down, figure this out as I go too. I figure the first thing you probably wanna do is shut the heat off. So we'll do that. The other thing to consider in this setup is how you're going to deal with chilling your wort. Most people I talked to said, yeah, just pop the lid a little bit, or pop the lid off and stick the immersion chiller in there, and if you use immersion chiller, and then put the lid back on, just kind of rest it on there. That's probably what I'll end up doing. In my situation, I don't think a counterflow chiller would be of much benefit, since I do not have cold enough groundwater for it to be a one-pass thing. And sorry, I'm waiting for this thing to finish draining before I pop that hose off. Okay, so we'll take that off. Obviously, I shut my water off first. So I don't think there'd be any benefit there. I suppose if I had a stainless steel fermenter and a glycol chiller, you could like do a one pass on a counterflow. It'd probably get you pretty close, and then you could chill the rest of the way with the glycol chiller. I don't think I want to go that route yet. Glycol and all that is not on my radar at the moment, but we'll see. Okay, so into the boil. Turn the heat off. Turn the water off. If this was a real thing, I would have done my anyway, done the chiller in some form or fashion. I'm gonna pop the lid off. And I will switch to my phone so we can get a sense of how much the boil off changed. I think I said this at the beginning, but I'm pretty much dead on at a gallon an hour under normal circumstances. So we'll see what this looks like. All right, let's put this off to the side. I assume there's going to be still steam coming out, so be careful. Wear gloves. Avoid the steam so you don't like stick your arm in there. Safety first, all that. So we'll put that off to the side. Yeah, fair amount of steam. Hey, and what do you know? It's hot. My glasses are fogging up, so I'll have to take a minute to see what this looks like. So it's looking like, for me, I'll get a shot on my phone. Hopefully I can sync this stuff up relatively well. Okay, switching to my phone here. It looks like the boil off for me was pretty much exactly the same, because I don't know how well you can see that, but that is pretty much exactly 7 gallons. I started with 8, and I was used to having a gallon an hour boil off. So the real test is going to be doing a real beer, and I'm going to do an Oktoberfest here in sometime this week, actually. So that may behave differently, but this at least gives me something to start with, and I can adjust accordingly. In terms of the runoff water, it was pretty much 20 gallons. I emptied about every 4 gallons just so the bucket didn't get super full, and that is the last one down there. And it I don't know how much it has in there. Can't see the gradations from here. Maybe more like 3 gallons. So, you know, between probably 18 to 20 gallons of runoff water. But overall, I mean, this worked really well. I'll have some closing thoughts here in a minute. You know, dealing with the chiller, still a little bit of a question mark, but that's kind of stuff you don't figure out until you do it the first time. In theory, I get some approaches, but yeah, but overall, it's a slick device. Worked great, no leaks. I think I fixed that duo-tight leak by just jamming it in there a little bit harder a couple times, and that seemed to fix it. And yeah, and then when I'm chilling, I would just swap out the quick disconnect from the input hose on the steam condenser to the wort chiller, and that'll be easy. All the stuff is set up for that. Floor drain, I may have to rethink, because I think the water comes out faster than I was assuming it would, based on some things I've seen. So there's my floor drain. It is not a channel drain. I might have to figure out. I've been thinking maybe somebody has a solution to this. There's got to be some sort of a contraption you can put on top of that drain that you can attach a hose to. That would be ideal, but I don't know if that exists or not. I might have to make one. But anyway, that is the end of the boil. Looking like it's 1 gallon, no matter what, for me. So we'll see how it behaves with the real beer, and I will definitely keep people updated. But I'll stop it here and get some closing thoughts going. All right, so there you have a full cycle, my first full cycle with the BrewZilla Steam Condenser lid. Overall, I'd give it an A+. This it's a nice, solid piece of equipment, especially with this nice wide lid, heavy lid. The thing keeps balanced such that, you know, this is still hot, so I'm not going to grab it, but too much. But basically, you know, it's not going to tip over on you. I've seen some videos where people like had a support here. I don't know if those are older models, or maybe if on the 35-liter BrewZilla, since it's less wide, it gets a little bit less stable. But this is nice and rock solid. So it makes it easy just to kind of put it on and off as needed, instead of having to assemble it on the fly while it's on the BrewZilla, which is nice. Overall, it worked great. The power I used was about 65% to keep it right at 212 or above. The temperature stayed really stable, which is not necessarily true when I'm doing an open boil, especially if it's cold outside and I have to have a window open and I'm blowing a fan. You know, it keeps it at a boil, but if I set the temperature like 216, it'll drop to the allowed, you know, sensor differential pretty regularly. This stayed pretty much stable the whole time. I think it's well put together. I'll say that too. All the tri-clamps and gaskets, no leaking anywhere, no steam coming out at all on any of that stuff. The little bit of leaking I had here, I think, is fixable. Either I'll just get a new fitting or make sure I push that in a couple times after it gets going, because it seemed to, once it was going and I pushed it in a couple times, it seemed to stop. So the sight glass isn't much of a sight glass. I don't know if there's a way to get rid of the condensation on the inside of that thing, but it's still, you know, even if you can't look in there, it's still it's a handy way to do additions. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when I do my first beer on it. The boil off rate for me was exactly the same as without this thing. That's going to be different for everybody, and you definitely want to do a test, or just do a brew on it and see where you wind up. But it's good to know ahead of time, so I don't even have to adjust my BrewFather profile or anything for the equipment. It should be exactly the same. So we'll see how it behaves when I do my Oktoberfest on it. I don't remember how much this whole setup cost. It was not inexpensive. By the time you get the Pro lid and everything, it may have been $300 to $400. But I think for keeping the brewery environment drier and being able to not worry about a fan and windows and all that stuff, which still was kind of a halfway solution that wasn't super great, it's worth it for me to have the peace of mind that I'm not getting my walls wet and so on and so forth. I keep this place super dry. I have a pretty overkill dehumidifier in here, so I'm not worried about it growing mold or anything. But it's just going to be nicer to know that I'm not kind of getting steam in the room unnecessarily. So if you're an indoor electric brewer and you're fighting the steam issue and you have a hood of some sort that's not quite cutting it, for me this is going to be fantastic. I've been kind of not happy with my steam management solutions that I've done so far. And so this is going to be, for me, huge. As long as the brew goes well and the beer comes out tasting good, I don't know why I wouldn't. This is going to be a nice addition to the setup I have going. So I think that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll get back to you as best I can, or find out stuff I don't know. And if you've used this and you see me doing, again, first try at this thing, if you see me doing something weird, or there's a better way I could do it, or a different way to think about stuff, I would love to hear it as well. But I think, given the way I have my setup with my hoses and everything, and the floor drain, this is going to be a very easy thing to add into my brewing process that's going to make things, I think, a lot nicer, and cleanup is not going to be a huge additional burden either. So we'll see how it goes first beer, but highly recommend it for right now, and stay tuned for the Oktoberfest brewing setup or brewing video. That'll be my first actual use of the thing, and we'll see how I like it with real beer in the mix. So until next time, cheers, thanks for watching, see you in the next one.